Hello and welcome to this special edition of Altitude. I'm your host, Russell Porter, and today we're at Farnborough International Airshow. But we were here a couple of weeks ago to speak with the people who bring the show together. Let's see what they had to say. I'm joined by Les Freer, Airport Operations Director here at Farnborough Airport. Les, what's your background?
My background, well, I've been here for 3 years. I came here just before the previous air show in 2022. Prior to that, I was at Heathrow for 8 years in the airside compliance, safety, ground handling and airspace, so quite a broad variety there. Prior to that, had 15 years in freight and logistics. I've done air freight, sea freight, road transport, so pretty much all the modes of transport I've worked in. And prior to that, I spent 9 years in the Royal Marines.
So lots of aviation blended in through there.
Absolutely, yes.
And today's role as Airport Operations Director, what are the key threads in there?
Very dynamic operation, as every airport is. Certainly for myself, setting up the day can be quite difficult here. Unlike a commercial airport that has slotted agreements with airlines where you know where everything's coming in, here, aircraft can arrive with 4 hours notice. So the day can be quite dynamic. So you can start the day with good plans and then they start to change sort of 10, 12 o'clock. So we're quite a small operation in terms of people. So that can be quite difficult to move resource around to areas that you need it.
And turning to the air show, how important is the air show for the airport? Very
important. Certainly one of the attractions for me coming from Heathrow was the air show. I think it's synonymous for what Farnborough's about. It's this year it's 75 years anniversary, so there's a real good packed agenda this year. I think from a perspective of the business aviation, there's a lot of deals done here. It's billions of pounds worth of deals that are done during that airshow period. A lot of the technical research and development companies come to the airshow as well to put aviation on the map. And we're very, very pleased to be a part of that.
And what do you have to do and your team to bring all of that together?
Well, planning for the airshow starts typically about 8 months prior. So we will take all of the debrief activities from the previous airshow, what we did right, what we did wrong, what we could do better, and we wrap all of that into an operational concept of operations. And then we'll work closely with Farnborough International team and the air traffic team here, which is NATS, to pull everything together. We have a very comprehensive project plan. Over 3,000 lines of activities we have to deliver, but that pales into insignificance with Farnborough International's, which is, I think it's 40,000 plus lines of activities they have to do to create the show site. And then my role is to pull all of that together so that we can give the flight display director approval from our side, that he can then go to the CAA and get the relevant permits to put the airshow on.
I've had a little look at the script for the show in terms of the static and flying displays, and there's everything from Airbus A350s through to Apache helicopters. What are the major challenges there for you?
For me, the biggest challenge we have is that we take aircraft that are not typically flying into this airport. We take a BBJ airport, that's the largest aircraft we take. So the airport's set out for those kind of aircraft. So when you've got fast jets flying in and manoeuvring around the apron, that gives you a different dynamic from a safety perspective. This year we have a Chinook display team, for example. So the Chinook is going to fly in from RAF Hodgkin. It's going to drop a cannon for all intents and purposes on the runway. There's going to be military people running around moving that, and it's a sort of live display. And all of that comes with risk for us, because once all those displays are finished, we then have to do all the relevant inspections and get the airport open for flying, because during display week, we're a licensed airport up to midday. We then hand over the airfield to the Farnborough International side. So for the next 4 hours, we're effectively an unlicensed operation. And then we have to revert back to flying. So, within those 4 hours, we have to hope all goes well and hope we can reopen the airport. So for me, it's that making sure things go well, making things go to plan, and just making sure everybody's safe, be it on the airport and in the surrounding areas.
The show itself has a series of key themes, one of which are kind of the future trends. And I wonder, what work are Farnborough doing to accommodate advanced air mobility concepts?
We are very keen supporters of the government's Future Flight programme. We are aware of the DFT's ambition to have these eVTOLs flying around. I think they're looking at the first flight in 2026 and these to be commonplace in 28. A little bit ambitious, I think, for myself, because I think there's a lot of discussion to go on with regulation. But from our perspective, it's coming. I mean, these craft are coming down the line, so we have to prepare. We have 2 active trials going on at the moment, one with vertical aerospace. The second one is we're working with Eve FlexJet as well. They recently did a trial using a helicopter to model the arrival and departure routes of an eVTOL, which went very well.
I think the eVTOL market is very inspiring for young people coming into the industry, and one of the themes for the show this year is Pioneers of Tomorrow. How important is it that you think that the aviation industry reaches out to the next generation?
Absolutely critical. I was at Heathrow prior to COVID, and which hit the industry hard. A lot of airports had to then lay people off, and a lot of people exited the industry, either voluntarily or forced. I think, like everything that happened in COVID, there was a quiet period of reflection, and a lot of people didn't come back into the industry. So I think it's absolutely critical that we can reach out to the next generation and get them in. And we do a lot here. The team here sponsor a lot of educational school visits and other academics into the airport. We welcome them in, and we'll showcase the airport and try and hook them into aviation in a way that I'm hoping other airports do as well. And from what I see in the industry, I think they're all doing that. Because without getting these people through into the ranks, who's going to run airports of the future? Who's going to follow in my footsteps and look to do what I do out there?
On that theme, continuing to look to the future of aviation, sustainability is definitely one of the key challenges for aviation broadly. I know that Farnborough have set a pathway to net zero by 2030. How is that coming together?
Very well. Lots of strands going on in there. I think we accept that as the largest business aviation airport in the UK, that we have to take a leadership role on this. And I think everyone here is committed to doing things differently and quicker. A couple of examples of that: sustainable aviation fuel. We are the largest supplier of sustainable aviation fuel to business aviation clients in the UK. So the uplift has been really good over the past 2 years. And our ambition is to only sell sustainable aviation fuel going forward and replace Jet A1 in its entirety. The blockers to that is the fact that sustainable aviation fuel isn't made or manufactured in the UK. So, like other airports, we're looking to the government to change that policy and look to start generating that and producing that in the UK, so that we can then offer a consistent supply to the clients that want it.
One final question for you, Les. What are you most excited about with regard to the Airshow?
For me, the primary objective is to make sure it's a safe event for everybody, for people on the ground, for people flying, for people partaking, and ensuring that is the case is my number one priority. From a personal perspective, just delivering the plan in the way that we know we can. The team here do an excellent job, and it's a testimony to everybody here when we put on this successful show. You hear 30,000 people over there clapping and applauding. It hits you. It's great to be a part of that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Les. I'm joined by the NATS team here at Farnborough: Alex Culley, General Manager, and James Granger, Manager of Operations and Training. Hello, James. Hello, Alex.
Hello. Hi, Russell.
So, Farnborough are about to host one of the world's biggest air shows. Alex, how are you feeling?
I'm really excited. This has been years in the planning and the culmination of a huge amount of work by a team that's worked very, very hard with our partners at Farnborough Airport and Farnborough International as a real team effort to bring together hopefully one of the biggest events in the aviation world.
And James, when does this planning start for an airshow like this?
Pretty much the moment the last airshow finishes. So essentially, once the airshow finishes, we'll have a wash up to see how it went, if there's anything we can potentially improve on for the following airshow. And from that moment on, we start thinking about the next airshow in 2 years' time.
And what does the planning involve? What are the sort of key considerations that you need to take into account?
The main thing is the effect on other airspace users, but also the procedures for the controllers, because the procedures differ slightly from our normal day-to-day operations. So it's ensuring that the controllers are fully aware of what's going on and they've got the tools to actually do the job when it comes up to the next airshow.
And one of the other big challenges here is the fact that we're still running the day-to-day operation alongside the Farnborough Airshow. So the airshow happens in the afternoon, but in the morning we're still running our normal plan and our normal schedule, and actually it compresses everything into a smaller period of time. So trying to bring all of those things together in consideration and working with the airport and with the international team to make that as seamless as hopefully possible for the customers who are travelling is a really, really big challenge.
And so how do you manage the handover then from the day-to-day to the airshow?
So we're doing a lot of forward planning, which is one of the things I think we're really proud of here, of how we've made things different from the past. We're working with the airport team so they can look ahead and plan what that schedule can look like for them, making sure that we've got our rostering and all of our staff in place, everybody's briefed and everybody understands what's going to happen and how the plan's going to work, should hopefully give us the ability to look ahead and have everybody in the right place at the right time.
So on the day, during the show, will the NATS team be providing air traffic control to the display team?
So we provide normal air traffic control services, so we're controlling the aircraft on the ground, moving the aircraft around the ground. We essentially hand the aircraft over to the display when they're ready to actually go into the display. Once they finish their display, they'll call downwind, and then they'll be transferred back to our controllers for landing clearance. So essentially we hand over once they're actually doing the display, but other than that, normal air traffic control procedures apply around the airfield.
So what about impacts on other surrounding airports?
So we're surrounded quite closely by several airfields around here. So just to the north we have Blackbush. We also have Fair Oaks beneath the 7 mile final off runway 24. And to the other end we have RAF Odium with their Chinooks. So we share the airspace with quite a lot of people, and the Blackbush and Fair Oaks, we actually work their traffic that are routing to and from the ATS route network. On top of that, during the airshow, we have to work very closely with terminal control at Swanwick and develop procedures for with Heathrow as well for their standard instrument departures, their SIDs from Heathrow. So some of those SIDs have to be amended and changed specifically for the airshow, and that has to be done in good time in order for the coding houses to produce the information so that the crews have the right information when they call up for start during the airshow period.
And those crews, that's the flight deck of aircraft that are flying into and out of Heathrow?
Correct, yeah, out of Heathrow. So it's the standard instrument departures that are affected, basically.
Just to add on to James's commentary there about terminal control, we have terminal control controllers actually join us for the airshow as a liaison cell. So obviously the closer working relationship we can have with TC and Farnborough during what is a really busy time helps everybody. So we actually get access to some of the terminal control team here for a period of time, which is excellent.
So is it a lot of pressure for you and the team?
The pressure's kind of leading up to it, really, to ensure, one, the procedures are in place, but also the controllers have had sufficient briefings and training prior to the airshow and validation week starting. So for us, the airshow isn't just a week, it's actually a 2-week period. It includes a validation week prior to the actual airshow week that everybody knows about.
And there are briefings every day to all of the pilots who are flying. So actually the activities for us, even though the airshow is in the afternoon, start far, far earlier in the day. So the NATS team here are part of all of that process to make sure that all the pilots who are flying are fully cognizant of what's going on around them and all the restrictions they have to fly within. So there's a pressure environment in terms of it's not just delivering the ATC on the day, which obviously is a significant piece of work, but actually behind the scenes making sure that everybody's where they need to be and knows what they need to do. And that's what is really, really critical to hopefully a success.
We're in the tower building here at Farnborough. I'm guessing this is one of the best seats in the house when it comes to the air show. Will you get much time to actually watch the display?
It is for the tower controllers, so they get a great view. From my point of view, in the role I do now, not so much. So I'll be sort of more on the ground, probably more over the other side, but backwards and forwards. I'll try and see a little bit, but to be honest, I think the tower controllers are going to get the best view, and they deserve it, so it's fine.
And Alex, you?
James and I will be, as James says, over the other side with the Airshow team, and probably in a darkened room, trying to help with the coordination and seeing what we can see out the window.
I've had a bit of a peek at the static and flying display schedule, and there's a really wide range of aircraft that will be here. Does that present any kind of particular challenges for you?
It's slightly different because, I mean, generally, business aviation, GA aviation is the same type of aircraft. The size is fairly similar, so we're sort of day-to-day. Our largest aircraft here normally is a sort of an A320, that sort of size aircraft, or a Boeing 737 business jet. But during the Airshow, we get some of the larger stuff. In the past, we've had the A380, we've had Boeing 777, A350, etc. So if we get those types of aircraft, we have to think about wake turbulence, the space and final approach, but also once they get on the ground, we need to consider how they're going to turn around, because they need to go to the end of the runway, to the harder part of the runway, how long it's going to take for them to get off the runway, because we've still got traffic that's following behind. So there's a lot more coordination that goes on, a lot more planning goes on about the arriving aircraft and trying to sequence them into the normal traffic pattern. And
is there any insider information that you can give us, or are there any kind of, what are you looking forward to, I guess?
So I think for me, the fast jets are one of the things that you can't not say you're not looking forward to seeing that. The noise, the excitement of something travelling that close to you that you'd never normally get into contact with. Certainly for me, I think that's going to be the highlight.
Yes, it's generally the fast jets. I do like seeing the larger stuff coming in, of course, because it's different. It's not our day-to-day, but the fast jets are always a good one to see.
And I think there's also some new airspace users that this show is going to host. So not as many as we'd hoped, but we've worked very hard to accommodate the aircraft that are coming, and some of those things that obviously we've never seen before, and some of the new technology that's coming. We don't know what that's going to look like yet, and I think that's going to be really exciting to start to work with.
It's not uncommon to not actually know the full programme ourselves until very late in the day.
James, Alex, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
James, you spoke about the airport and the surrounding airspace and the impacts from the Airshow. I wonder if you could just take us through how all of that comes together on this map.
So this is obviously a bird's eye view of the airfield. I will say that we're waiting for an update from the satellites, but this doesn't show the new large hangar that's been built between taxiway Delta and taxiway Bravo. A bit of orientation. So this is our westerly runway 24 in that direction, and runway 06 in the other direction. The Airshow site is essentially south of the runway, around the Farnborough International Exhibition Centre, and it follows the fence line. Basically, follows very close to the runway, which is why we become a visual runway. We switch off the ILS during the Airshow, and that runs all the way to this part of the airfield here. So the fast jets are likely to be parked in this area here, but the general public will see a lot of the static aircraft around here, around this area. You can also see the piano keys, the thresholds of our normal runways. So that's our day-to-day runway outside of Airshow period. During the Airshow period, because we get larger aircraft that come into us that need a longer runway available to them for landing, we also have a longer runway available. This is the area here. You can't see it marked too clearly as a faint line, but a white line is painted there, so it's a new threshold, especially for those aircraft. They have to be approved, and they have to be specially briefed in order to be able to actually use that longer runway. And we also have a second set of PAPIs, which is quite unique at Farnborough to other airfields, purely for the Airshow that happens every 2 years. Behind
you have an aeronautical chart. Could you perhaps explain some of the impacts that you spoke about when we were with Alex?
So it's quite a busy map, and obviously air traffic controllers and people in aviation would understand that. So you've got Heathrow Airport here with a large control area. This is Farnborough's airspace here. The runway in the centre there. Just to the north of Farnborough, we have Blackbush Airfield, RAF Odium to the southwest, Fair Oaks over to the northeast, but we also have the largest gliding site in the world, Lasham, over here. We control aircraft that are inbound to Farnborough via the ATS route network for Blackbush, Fair Oaks, but also Lasham. We also deal with aircraft into Dunsfold, close to the Gatwick area. So the controllers are working quite a lot of traffic in quite a busy piece of airspace. So as I described before, this year we've actually reduced the size of the restricted area temporary to wholly be contained within our controlled airspace. That allows Blackbush to operate in a much freer way without interruption, so that it doesn't affect their business, basically.
It's day 2 of the show, and it's already really busy with lots of key announcements being made. Some of the big themes of this year's show are sustainability, space, the future of flight, and the next generation of aviation. And we're here to talk to some of the key players from the aviation industry. With the future of flight a key theme of this year's show, it's no surprise to see eVTOL manufacturers here. And I'm joined by Daniel Wiegand, founder of Lilium. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Daniel, we are here in front of the Lilium jet. It's an incredible, futuristic-looking aircraft. Can you give us the guided tour?
Sure, so this is an all-electric vertical takeoff and landing jet, the world's first of its kind. It can carry 6 passengers, features the largest cabin in the eVTOL sector, and it can fly about 170 kilometers upon market entry in 2 years. But it's designed such that you can replace the batteries, which are here in the sidewall. As we get better battery technology in the future, our customers can replace those every 2 or 3 years and extend the range of the aircraft. So our target is to fly these airplanes in regional missions up to 300 kilometers within a few years and generate high-speed connectivity from any city to any other city without the need to build billions of dollars of ground transportation.
And in terms of the tech, in terms of the aircraft itself, I see wings, canards, but I also see lots of small engines mounted on both. What's the concept there?
So the concept was to use electric jet engines because unlike the typical air taxi, we're targeting missions of about 30 to 60 minutes. So you need something that's more comfortable, that generates less vibration, that feels very much like a jet aircraft, which we are all used to in our travel lives. And this other advantage of the electric jet engines is that they allow us to fly faster in the cruise and more efficient. So they're kind of the perfect technology for the mission this aircraft is intended to do. And the reason we have not just chosen 4 or 6 large engines hanging under the wings like we know it from jet aircraft usually is that embedding the engines and making them smaller helps us to reduce the weight and drag of the aircraft.
So this is quite a unique design, and I understand it's called a blown wing.
You can call it a blown wing or embedded engines. Ultimately, it's a thrust vectoring system, which is the same control concept like you've seen it on fighter jets like the F-22 or the F-35, which have all a vector thrust system.
And you mentioned missions. I understand that you've recently signed a contract with Saudi for 50 of the jets. How will they be using them?
So their intent is to use these aircraft for regional missions to, on the one side, do premium connectivity, and on the other side, create a lot of connectivity, for example, for all the people visiting Mecca, so doing Jeddah-Mecca. They're planning to connect Riyadh in different connections. They're planning to connect the Red Sea, Neom. So across the country, there's a lot of regional missions which they intend to fly.
And what are the biggest challenges, Daniel, in terms of integrating an aircraft like this into the sky?
So one of the challenges was the technology, but we have tested this technology for 5 years, so now we have a lot of confidence and it's quite mature. Now the challenge is these airplanes are in final assembly now for the first 2 certification aircraft, and the whole company is focused on ground testing these airplanes and doing the first piloted flights in early 25 and obtaining a type certificate so we can do first customer deliveries in 2026.
And can we expect to see it flying in the UK skies?
Absolutely. The UK is going to be one of the very first countries you're going to see this aircraft fly. The reason is that the regulatory environment is very helpful. The UK has a bilateral agreement with EASA, which is our prime regulator for the aircraft, to accept the type certificate. And there's also regulation in place for the ground and for the operations.
Shall we take a look inside?
Let's get inside.
After you. Daniel, here in the cabin, it's clearly very luxurious. What does the passenger experience entail?
So the cabin is what makes the money in an eVTOL or in any aircraft. So our target was to achieve a cabin that is very spacious, very comfortable, and that allows us, like in the premium version, which we experience here, to have a very comfortable ride. You can freely customize the colors in the cabin, the ceiling. You have very large panoramic windows. You can customize the seating. You can add monuments if you want to have a bar or so. But we can also use the space in the cabin for an economy version with 6 passengers, which allows us to have a very low ticket price of $2 per passenger kilometer in an airline operation, fully loaded, including the profits for the airline.
And what about up front? I noticed there's only one seat for the pilot.
Yes, it's
Just
a single pilot aircraft, full fly-by-wire. We have good indications which are very easy to understand for the pilot. And when you have an electric aircraft, there's a few intricate things which are different to a normal airplane in terms of how you predict range, how you predict the thermal status of the aircraft, and how you make it very easy for the pilot to understand in a second. One glance on the screen and you know that's the condition of the aircraft, this is the capability I have right now, and take your decision.
Daniel, one of the key themes of this year's show is the next generation of aviation. You are a founder of an aviation company. That is no mean feat. What's your story?
I always, for a long time, had a passion for nature and the planet. And in an idea to make an electric aircraft was kind of the key opportunity for me to at least help solving one of the small puzzle pieces in climate change and helping to make aviation sustainable. And I think these small electric airplanes in the eVTOL sector, they will not solve all the sustainability problems aviation has today, but the technology inside can help over time to electrify larger aircraft and become a big and important piece of solving the climate change problem in aviation. We see ourselves as an electric aviation company, not just as an eVTOL or urban air mobility company. And our clear intent is to use the know-how, technologies and regulation we have in the industry developed for this aircraft and transfer this on larger conventional takeoff and landing regional airliners.
Daniel, thank you so much for your time. One final question for you. We're here at Farnborough. It's a huge show, lots to see. What are you most looking forward to?
Well, when I tour the show, then I'm usually looking either for the air displays, I'm a huge fan of that, or I'm looking for everything that is electric aviation.
Fantastic. Daniel, thank you very much and enjoy the show.
Thank you.
I'm here on the Joby stand with Bonny Simi, President of Operations at Joby. Hello, Bonny, and welcome to Altitude.
Yeah, very nice to meet you.
Bonny, you are an ex-pilot, Emmy-nominated sports reporter and 3 times Olympian. You now work for Joby. Where do we start with that?
Well, I do like adventure. Let's just put it that way. And I am still a pilot. But yes, I did work for the airlines. I flew 777s, 727s, little planes, seaplanes, all kinds of planes, and now very much looking forward to operating our aircraft here. So when the aircraft takes off, it takes off vertically, and then these transition forward and tilt forward. So the aircraft then transitions turns into a 6-engine, we call them motors, right? 6 propulsion forward flight aircraft. So this then flies on the wing just like a regular aircraft. What's really, really interesting, so our propellers are very, very specially designed. So these are designed such that they hardly make any noise when it turns through the wind. So you think of a helicopter, it has that whop, whop, whop sound, right? These are designed, they turn very slow. And they're spaced and designed in such a way that they sounds like leaves in the wind. It's a whoosh.
That's a lovely advertising line.
Yes.
And
so it's very you don't hear it overhead at all.
And so talking about the cockpit.
Yes.
Then.
So here we have our cockpit. So how about this? I'll get in and I'll show you a little bit about how it can fly. All right. So welcome to the aircraft here
Thank you very much.
Pilot. So what I'll be doing is explaining the flight controls here and how easy it is to fly. So I'll be pulling here. If I pull back on the stick here, the aircraft will lift off, and I can literally let go, and it's hovering. And then I have this over here. These are inceptors, right? So this is called an inceptor. I'll just push forward here. What'll happen is the propulsion units will then start to move forward, and the aircraft will speed up and fly like an airplane. So it's very simple. The turn, I'll just bank it just like I would, on a joystick, for example, on a video game, if you will. So the aircraft, and then when I want to slow down, I just pull this back, and it'll transition automatically from flying forward to a hover. And then I just push down here and to land.
So as an experienced pilot, and you've flown various different airliners, how does this compare?
This is the most simple aircraft to fly I've ever flown. It's called unified flight controls. What that means is it operates in, quote, helicopter mode or vertical mode, the same way it does when it's in forward flight. So the aircraft is very, very intuitive, and you literally, it's just have these controls. So what that allows is you naturally can fly the plane. It just feels comfortable. So then you can spend your sort of mind share, if you will, managing air traffic control, managing, talking with the controllers, all of the safety elements. It just makes it so safe.
You've spoken about electric power, and this aircraft will have batteries. But I know that you've just completed a 523-mile hydrogen test flight.
Yes.
Are you also hedging on hydrogen power?
So yeah, we just demonstrated 523 miles. So we took an aircraft exactly like this. We took out the batteries, put in some smaller batteries, and then used liquid hydrogen with fuel cell. And then in 6 weeks, retrofitted the aircraft, and then we were up flying in hydrogen. So that is the future. We really believe that it's urban, so within a city region will be electric, but then to connect to regional mobility will be then hydrogen electric.
So Bonny, you mentioned that these will be flown within cities. I know you've been flying in and around Manhattan.
Yes.
How's that going?
We did a demonstration in Lower Manhattan, right off the helicopter port there. We flew around the city for people to see that this is a real aircraft. A typical time to go from Lower Manhattan to get out to JFK, it could be an hour, it could be 2 hours. Depends on a car. It's 6 minutes here. So the time you show up at the vertiport till you're at the terminal is 6 minutes.
And so how was it received by the New Yorkers then who saw the demonstration?
It was fabulous. So as I mentioned, our aircraft is incredibly quiet. Now in New York, there's a lot of controversy about helicopters and how noisy they are. In fact, there's even a community group that came out to protest new forms of transportation. And then they heard it. And let's just put it this way. Joby, our CEO, was doing a talk describing the aircraft as it was flying and behind him. And one of the people in the audience said, "Could you please stop talking for a minute? We can't hear the aircraft."
Point well made.
Yeah.
Fantastic. What can we do to address diversity in this industry?
Yeah, so this type of opportunity is amazing for women. So I was an airline pilot, and trust me, it's very difficult to raise a family when you're an airline pilot. You never know, am I going to get called off to go fly to London tomorrow? And what do I do about childcare? So flying all-nighters was a challenge. This is an amazing aircraft, but it decidedly does not fly all-nighters. In fact, it's home every night. So it is a wonderful opportunity for women and to open it up so that women can have a very exciting career, start their aviation career with us, and then move into the airlines as well. So we see this as an excellent opportunity to diversify.
I have to admit, your stand is getting a lot of attention. It's very busy here.
Yes, yeah, it's like nonstop. I show up here before the show starts, and I go nonstop, literally, all the way until the end of the day. From one day, it's meetings with different regulatory bodies, with VIPs, with investors, to, there's users coming by here, excited about this, what this could bring to their future.
Bonny, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure.
It's a pleasure.
I'm joined by Nick Smith, Director of Space for Lockheed Martin UK. Nick, welcome to Altitude.
Thanks for having me, Russell. Great to be here.
We're here in Farnborough in the sort of space area, and it's attracting a lot of attention. There are a lot of people in here. What are the sort of technological advancements that you're most excited about in the space industry?
Things that I think are becoming really quite interesting. Things like, what about when we start actually using resources in space to do things in space? So will we start manufacturing things in space without anything up there? So, will we have robotic systems that create new systems from the resources they have there? That I think is fascinating. The other thing I think which may just change things is some of the work that's going on now, and we're involved in it as Lockheed Martin, in things like nuclear power and nuclear propulsion. When we really think about how we're going to get to those next places quickly enough to really start doing that deep space exploration, that I think is fundamental for us understanding where we come from. things like nuclear propulsion will be really important. It'll also change, by the way, how we deliver some of those services we consume on Earth, because it'll change the way we can power our systems. But I just think this notion of being able to move further and faster in space, that could be really quite game-changing.
And that concept of service provision here on Earth from space and production of things in space, is that where the term a space economy comes from?
We talk about things like, I've heard people use phrases like the low Earth orbit economy, and that's really about how you can use microgravity as an environment to start doing different types of manufacturing or different types of testing. Things like pharmaceutical and medical companies have understood that if you're doing certain experiments, doing those in microgravity gives you more realistic results as if it was growing in a body. So that's really important. There's a company behind us called SpaceForge, really cool company, and they're thinking about using microgravity and the environment of microgravity to do production of elements of semiconductors. So that's part of it. But I think as well, the broader space economy starts encompassing all those things. And quite frankly, if you start understanding all those parts that the space or space touches and the economic benefits, that's from the services delivered. So what does navigation, precision navigation and timing do for autonomy? We need that for autonomy. When you think about moving data between lots of different active devices around the world, which you need space, and then in-orbit manufacturing. But then the next stage, of course, is the lunar economy, and how do you start providing services to activities that may take place on the moon. That is the whole economy. And at the moment, the latest report I heard said it could be worth sort of $1.8 trillion by 2035. I mean, it seems to grow all the time, but there's no doubt that where space touches something with an economic benefit, the opportunity is huge. And we in the UK need to be part of that.
And in terms of Farnborough, what's so important about the show for you from the space perspective?
An interesting challenge for us all when we start thinking about platforms that go from sort of an air-breathing environment across the Kármán line into space and then return again. Is that space or is that aviation? Where's that? And I think we're starting to see a blurring of that line. The other thing that became apparent as well is through COVID, just the interlink between the sort of aviation and airline industrial sector and space. Many of those suppliers and component subsystem suppliers that we're reliant on when we manufacture space systems quite often have a large aviation business as well. And what we found is when there was a decline in the aviation world, it actually had an impact on the space business. So we're far more linked than probably we think. So I think it's really important that, and we're seeing this in a number of areas, I think it's really important that both the aviation sector and the space sector just understand where those links are and quite frankly, capitalize on the opportunity space that's there.
So lots of opportunity, lots of interesting technology. What are some of the big challenges that are facing this industry?
Space is still hard, but I think that what you're trying to get to is probably more about how does the industrial base respond. I would say the one thing we've got to be very aware of is many countries see space as a strategic sector. And because of that, they work hard to protect and shore it up, which means that the space, quite often in different parts of the sector, don't operate with natural market forces. I think the UK needs to understand that if it wants to have a globally competitive space sector, it needs to find a way of operating in what is not natural market forces globally and probably have some of the right interventions. I think if we can get that right, we've got such great technology here, and we've got such great entrepreneurship that we can really take a part in it.
So one of the big themes of the show is all focused on the next generation of talent. I wonder, what message might you give to a young person who's looking for a career in space?
The reality is space needs a lot of the skills that many technology sectors do. We need software engineers, we need production engineers, we need communicators, we need accountants, we need business development people, we need all of those things. So what I would say is, depending on whatever your dream is from a career perspective, space is still open to you.
Nick, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks.
The Airshow isn't just about aircraft. We've got something a little bit different now, Project Bluebird. I'm joined by John Korna from NATS and Martin Layton from Exeter University. Hello John, hello Martin, welcome to Altitude.
Hi Russell.
John, we ran an episode of Altitude last year focused on artificial intelligence, and we featured Project Bluebird on there. For those people who didn't see that show, can you tell us a little bit about what Bluebird is?
Sure. Project Bluebird is a 5-year, £15 million collaboration between the Alan Turing Institute, NATS and the University of Exeter. It's predicated on 3 main research themes. The first around building a digital twin of UK airspace. The second is looking to build digital AI agents to operate and control aircraft in that digital twin. And then also the third one is looking at the explainability, trustworthiness of the agents, so then we can have confidence they're doing the right things and that everybody has a good understanding of why they're doing those things. And also, so then we can look to where else we can use them potentially.
Thank you very much, John. Martin, John spoke there about AI agents. What's an AI agent?
An AI agent is a computer program that is designed to emulate the behaviors of an air traffic controller. So in the same way as a controller has to handle multiple aircraft within their sector and keep those safely, keep separation between those, keep safety assured, the agents have to essentially copy the same behavior. But we're also constructing them so they're flexible, so we can turn behaviors off. So we could say, well, if we didn't have this rule, or if we allowed something to behave in a different way, what would happen? Would we increase capacity? Would we reduce it? Would it be safer, less safe, and so on? So they're very much designed and tailored to the task at hand, rather than, say, learnt from first principles.
So one of the things that we're looking to do is work towards trying to pass the same basic exam that a human would in November. Now that's probably going to be quite challenging, and there'll be areas where it definitely doesn't pass because it can't talk to pilots. But we can look at things like, is it safe? Is it expeditious? Is it making coordination and things like that? So we can get as close as we can, but we're not going to get over the absolute line.
I understand that as part of the project you are developing a digital twin. Is that the case? And what does that mean in the context of aviation?
Indeed. The digital twin is a computer representation of the UK airspace. It's a tool. So if you're going to perform any experiments, you're going to evaluate an agent, you're even going to evaluate human controllers, you need to be able to see what is happening and be able to measure things. So, for example, the digital twin allows us to issue clearances to aircraft and to actually take control of aircraft and them to behave as they would in the real world, without us having to talk to real pilots, without us having to sort of touch an operational system that is very difficult to do research upon.
Thank you, Martin. I understand this is a collaboration between Exeter University, NATS, the Turing Institute. How's that working out for you?
I think we approach it from the academic side, the commercial side, approach it from a different perspective. You've got the industry knowledge from the commercial side, and you've got the knowledge of techniques and a knowledge of techniques from the academic side, an ability to research. So we both learn different things from each other, and it works well as a collaboration.
Great stuff. Well, thank you both, and I hope you enjoy this show. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So we've heard from John and Martin about the broader context of Project Bluebird. Now I'm joined by Amy Hodgkin from the Turing Institute. Amy, hello and welcome to Altitude.
Hi.
Amy, I understand the projects have developed a game to help with outreach. Can you tell us how the game works?
So the aim of the game is to safely arrive your different aircraft to their exit fix without losing separation with any of the other aircraft in the sector. We have 2 aircraft coming into the sector at the bottom and 1 at the top. Each aircraft has its current flight level, the exit flight level that we need to get it to, and the fix that we want to exit it at. So these 2 at the bottom are on separate flight levels currently, but they want to exit at the same fix at the same flight level. So I'm going to start with this one and get it down to the correct flight level, and this one too. But I'm just going to make sure that I direct this one round the corner before it gets too close to the other aircraft.
And when you're playing this game, what's the artificial intelligence doing in the background?
So right now we don't have any of the AI doing anything in the background, but we can play it against the agent. So our optimization agent can play the game, and you can see if you can try and beat it. I don't think you can. It can complete the game essentially controlling 20 plus aircraft in the sector until the game runs out.
Thank you very much for joining us on Altitude.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Gary Cutts, Director of Future Flight Challenge. Gary, welcome to Altitude.
Thank you.
What does the Future Flight Challenge entail?
The Future Flight Challenge is a government programme been running for 4 to 5 years, and our intent is to help the UK accelerate the adoption of new forms of aviation, so drones, eVTOLs and other clean forms of aviation. But for us, it's very much around the breadth of the entire aviation system. The aircraft technology is key, but those new forms of aviation need new physical infrastructure, new digital systems. They will need new concepts of airspace and airspace management. Critically, there'll be a whole new set of business models and a different relationship with the public. So if that makes sense, it's a total socio-economic system we're trying to create with technology as its driving force. Incredibly broad and incredibly exciting.
So there's a whole lot going on there. How do you, as the director of the challenge, bring all of that together?
We talk a lot about co-creation and co-architecting, that complex system, lots of organisation. NATS is a really good example. Lots of established organisations and startup organisations all have a component of that new system. So our role has been sort of nurturing the relationships, encouraging the ways of behaving between those people so that the whole of that ecosystem comes together and co-designs and co-creates.
I know that currently we're in the third phase of the Future Flight Challenge. What have been the big achievements to date?
I'll pick out a few highlights. So we've run more than 100 funded projects of collaborative research and development. So that's involved drones flying on prototype healthcare system use cases across the breadth of Scotland. We're looking to try and have a corridor across more than 80 kilometres for drone flying in the south of England. And ultimately we're looking to try and have an eVTOL flying, a UK developed and designed and built eVTOL flying into Heathrow Airport and into a first of its type permanent vertiport built in rural Oxfordshire. So there's quite a lot of stuff. That's 3 of 100 plus projects we've done. And to give you a little bit more, because there's a lot of breadth here, alongside the technical projects we've been running as well, you'll see that we've just published an important piece of social science research, a deliberative dialogue with nearly 50 members of the public.
And within that work, Gary, what are some of the kind of key concerns that people have about technologies such as this one taking to the skies?
So the public is quite sophisticated in understanding how these things can bring benefits to them. But there are a range of concerns, as you say. So there are some really obvious things. Noise sits on the list of things, but it is absolutely not the top. And people think it is. It's not the top concern. Other concerns are around these things are very dependent on technology, sensing, data storage and digital systems. What are the privacy implications of that? How does that impact people's lives? And is there an intrusion from these things flying? There's a lot of consideration to the effect on wildlife. So not how we might classically think about it, what's the bird strike risk to the drone, but what will drones do to migratory bird patterns? Is that something that we need to research? So there's a broad range of considerations. I think the important thing for us is that we're having that as a conversation, and when you know people's concerns, we can work with industry to do things about that.
Thanks, Gary. And with all of those considerations in mind, how far away do you think we are from seeing drones such as this one flying in through the skies on a kind of normalised basis?
My personal view is within the next 3 years or so, we'll have ticked most of those boxes, not just the technical, but the other considerations we've talked about, and we could have large-scale drone operation at volume and over quite significant ranges as well. Worth saying for us as a challenge, we deal with drones, eVTOLs and beyond. And eVTOLs is probably a similar timescale as well. I mean, we would think that eVTOLs, sometime from 2026, 2027, we should be seeing commercial operation of those things.
What message might you have for anybody who's aspiring to a career in aviation?
Wow, I mean, I would say looking backwards, I mean, aviation has been a fascinating career for me to work in, so much technical challenge, and I wouldn't have swapped it for anything. But the next 5 years is a generational change. What we're about to do is nothing short of the third revolution of aviation. The digital systems, the application of artificial technologies, artificial intelligence technologies, and the widespread adoption of aircraft like this, generational change. So not only are there lots of technical challenges there, but it's incredibly fast moving right now. There are lots of new career opportunities turning up, but for me, the absolute dominant feature, the next 5 years, you will be the people who did that pivotal once-in-a-generation transformation in aviation. What a thing to look back on in 10 years' time.
Indeed, it's a really exciting time for aviation, that's for definite. One of the things you touched on earlier was a sense of we and working together, and I think you talked about co-creation. We're in Farnborough Airshow, and actually as we walk around, we're full of competing organisations here. How do you create that sort of sense of collaboration between organisations in the Future Flight Challenge?
One of the real pleasures of this job is that the people we work with are naturally collaborative, and it's really interesting. I'm not sure I know all the reasons why, but I do think it's because we're at the start of a new generation of aircraft and technology, and people have that innate excitement where they want to be part of creating good things, and that's almost the first thought, and then we want to turn that into business opportunities, maybe just behind that. So I think the nature of the technology, the excitement of the challenge people face, makes people want to share, makes them want to work together. So yeah, the industry is just naturally collaborative, and it's a real delight to work in.
So soon we'll be able to drop the word future, perhaps?
That's a really good question. This is just flight. One day we'll look back and we'll talk about what the 4th generation of flight is, but I may no longer be in this job at that time.
Gary, thank you very much.
Thank you, it's been a pleasure.
I'm joined by Brian Moran, Chief Sustainability Officer at Boeing. Brian, welcome to Altitude.
Thank you, and welcome to Boeing.
Thank you. Chief Sustainability Officer at Boeing, it sounds like a huge job. What does that entail?
I don't know if it's a huge job, it's the coolest job. I get to work with pretty much everybody in the company to collaborate on decarbonizing aerospace by the middle of the century, and that's a daunting challenge, but it's also pretty much the opportunity of a lifetime.
We know that we need to be net zero by 2050 as an industry. What role do aircraft manufacturers such as Boeing have to play in that?
Oh, we play a critical role, from the technology to informing the fuels to informing the operational procedures. I mean, we're right at the center of it, and we take that role very seriously. The most important thing, and what excites me about this job, is that 80% of the world's population has never set foot on an airplane. They deserve to, and it's our job to make it sustainable for them.
So when you talk about 80% of the world's population there, obviously there's a big predicted growth in aviation and air travel. How do we reconcile that against the need to be net zero by 2050?
Yeah, look, we've come a long way. We always look forward to 2050, but we did this total climate impact model called Cascade that visualizes sort of the total emissions of aviation, but it also looks back. And when you look back, you see that back then, and with the dawn of the jet age, we're about 20 liters per 100 kilometers, so a really, really inefficient car. Today, we're flying Priuses. So it gives you sort of a sense of how far we've come. But yes, we got to go further. And to answer your question, how we do that, I alluded to it, there are 5 strategies really. It's fleet renewal, look around us, all these beautiful airplanes, and our customers investing heavily in the latest kit. There's only about 20-25% penetration of the latest technology in the field out there. So we have a ways to go to bring the 787s and the MAXs to market. Second, it's about operational efficiency, flying more efficiently through the airspace, using the digital brains in the cockpit to make some of those decisions to stop wasting fuel by flying in a circuitous route. Third, it's about renewable energy, and we'll talk about SAF later, but it's also how hydrogen and electricity will earn their way safely onto the airplanes of tomorrow. Fourth is advanced technology, and you just look over my shoulder, we got exciting products like the X66 we're working on. And then lastly, it's about also carbon removals and offsets, where we're an active player.
Brian, putting over your shoulder then, tell us about the X66. I heard you speak at the Sustainable Skies Summit recently here at Farnborough, and you talked about the eco demonstrator. I see some interesting kind of wing configuration there. What's going on?
Well, it's exciting. We did a full briefing this morning on demonstrators, and that word is really important to us. We're not in PowerPoint, we're not ideating on paper. We're flying, and we're cutting metal. And that is one example. So the X66 is a partnership with NASA on an X-plane. And you know, you don't get to do an X-plane all that often, and when you do, you sit up straight. And this is an honor to do this with NASA. And what it is a sustainable flight demonstrator. So you got this long wing, and you got these trusses that are bracing this new radical wing design. That's why it's called a transonic truss-braced wing. But what it does, it creates a lot of real estate, if you will, under the wing for new novel propulsion technologies. And that, combined with a lot of other innovations on this program, we're shooting for about a 30% fuel burn improvement compared to the airplanes of today. How much of that will earn its way then onto the sort of mass production airplane, that's a different discussion, but this is a demonstrator to see how far can we push physics and technology.
And whilst we're on that journey then to mass SAF adoption, what can we do in the meantime?
I talked about operational efficiency. You'd be surprised how much waste there is in flying non-optimal routes. We did a test with our Eco Demonstrator franchise. It's a program we've done for 10 years where we either take one of our airplanes or one of our customers and we stuff it with technologies of tomorrow and we fly today. We've done over 280 technologies. About a third of those have earned their way onto the airplanes of today. So winglets that are ubiquitous now in the fleet used to be an Eco Demonstrator project. A recent one we've done, back to this trajectory optimization, is we did a multi-regional trajectory-based operation pilot across 4 countries across the Pacific. And we shaved off multiple % in fuel burn just by having better coordination across the airspaces and by using the digital brains in the cockpit to optimize the route and ultimately have continuous descent arrivals and perfectly timed arrivals.
If you could do just one thing, Brian, tomorrow to help us on that journey to net zero, are you optimistic about us getting there to the target?
I am. Yeah, and look, I keep talking about Cascade, but that's why we did it. It really illuminates the total emissions from aviation, and it allows you to play around with these 5 strategies I talked about earlier. And you can get there. It's hard. We know that. It takes a lot of investments. But we've, as I said, if you look back, look how far we've come, I'm very optimistic we'll get there. And it takes collaboration, and that's the role Boeing plays. We're right in the middle of it, convening regulators, the financing world, the energy companies, and aviation. And we're very proud of that role we get to play with all humility.
Thank you very much, Brian. You're obviously very passionate about aviation, a big player in the industry. What message would you give to a young person seeking a career in aviation?
Well, this very room, I'm taking my 6-year-old, my 9-year-old on Friday when it's kids' day at Farnborough. I'm going to take my tie off and take my 2 daughters to experience this. The advice is just get engaged, get some exposure to it. We have a lot of great STEM programs, and we'll feature some of those this Friday here at these air shows. If you've never been to an air show, go to one. It's an addicting industry, and just again, look around you. You know what I'm talking about.
Brian, thank you very much for your time today. It's been a pleasure.
Good, thank you.